Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'm Pat Edwards, Chair of Planning Committee, for those who haven't met me. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. The two exits are through the glass door behind you to my left and through the double doors on the riverside behind there. Please do not use the exit at the back to my right, as access is currently restricted by the works outside. Please meet at Tower House car park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I'd like to remind everyone present at the meeting that it's being minuted, recorded, filmed and made available to view live and in archive form via the Council's website. If you're seated in the public gallery, it's possible the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it's recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you to where to sit. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit, which is behind that glass section. John, can you give me any apologies, please?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Robert Jones, Chair.
And any substitutes?
Yes, Councillor Jeanette Stockley.
Thank you. Declarations of interest by councillors or officers. John, could you read out the generic declaration and any that have been sent to you in advance? Thank you.
All or some councillors may have received correspondence from or spoken with applicants, agents, supporters or objectors, and some of the public speakers may also be known to members of the committee due to their work as councillors. Neither circumstance prevents councillors from participating in the meeting. However, any councillor who considers that they do not have an open mind in respect of any item on the agenda should not participate in the meeting when the relevant item is to be discussed. And we haven't received any declarations in advance, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other interests to be declared? Okay, fine. Thank you. Public participation. I can confirm there are 3 public speakers tonight who will be heard immediately after the officer's presentation under the first main item. Minutes of the Planning Committee of the 16th of September 2025. Could I have a general assent that these are a true record, please?
On the item regarding the site at Chislett, Little Acre, I'm down as voting for the proposal. I wasn't at that meeting. I think it might be a slip of the typewriter, but I wasn't present that night. It's on page 4. And it's the item CA 24 02301.
Okay.
Little Acre.
Fine. Can we make that alteration, John? Thank you. Any other amendments, comments? So other than that, can I have general assent that they're a true record of the meeting? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So we move on to the first main application, application number CA 20 02627, land and adjacent to Cockering Farm, Thannington. This is a reserve matters application. Could I ask Kerry Williams, the consultant planner, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is a reserved matters application for phases 1 and 2 at Cockering Farm, consisting of 176 dwellings. The application seeks detailed approval for appearance, access, landscaping, layout and scale. As this is a reserved matters application, the principle of development has already been accepted, including, for example, impacts upon landscape and ecology, with mitigation being secured through the outline permission. Thank you. So this is the application site outlined in red. The blue line represents the wider allocation. Cockering Farm is located to the southern part of the site, with existing development in Thannington being located to the west. So the darker area in this slide is phases 1 and 2, and this can be seen as part of the wider allocation. Some features within the site, including the location of the spine road and the suds and open spaces, are fixed through the approval of the submission of details applications. So this is the detailed site plan for phases 1 and 2. Dwellings are provided at a relatively low density at 30 to 40 dwellings per acre, and dwellings are suitably located to ensure that they are separated and do not appear cramped, whilst ensuring that future occupiers have acceptable living conditions. The dwellings shown in orange and blue are the affordable homes, with orange units being affordable rent and blue being shared ownership. Passive EV charging is provided throughout phases 1 and 2, including the communal car parks. So these are both street elevations from within the centre of phases 1 and 2. And these are additional street elevations through phase 2. And again, additional elevations being taken through phase 2. These are the street elevations from within phase 1, with the top being along the spine road and the bottom being a street elevation taken internally. And finally, additional street elevations taken from within phase 1. So for the reasons within the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have three public speakers. You have 3 minutes each. And could I call Valerie Horn first, please?
So before I start, can I just check that everyone can see the images that John's, you need to put it up the other way, John. That's it, otherwise it won't make sense. So the top, yes, so the top image is the plan as taken from the planning website, and the bottom image is, it shows the boundary between Manor Close Gardens on the right and the new development on the left, and the blown up image at the bottom shows where the fence is, the black vertical line, and the trees that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so thank you, Chair and members. Okay, unfortunately, the comments that I made were not added as promised in December 2024. So today I'm here speaking on behalf of the 15 residents of Manor Close whose gardens back directly onto this development regarding the planned trees and hedgerow along the boundary with the Manor Close Gardens. Large trees, including Acer campestri, are proposed to be planted just 1 metre from our boundary fence. The Woodland Trust and Royal Horticultural Society say that these trees grow to 20 metres tall with an 8 metre spread at maturity. So the mature tree canopy will overhang our fence and gardens by 3 metres. That is a lot of tree to overhang our gardens. So if you see the enlarged image at the bottom there, the branches are likely to damage the fence, which it will be our responsibility to replace. There will be significant shadow cast across our gardens, particularly spring and autumn. The prevailing winds will blow the heavy leaf and large winged seed fall into our gardens. And indeed, given the recent storm force winds, potentially those trees might end up in our gardens if they're planted so close. So I'd like you to note that the new green area on the development side of the fence can easily accommodate these trees further away from this boundary fence and still be well away from the nearest of the new homes. For example, if planted at 4 metres rather than 1 metre from the fence, such trees would remain at least 8 metres away from the nearest boundary of any of the new homes. Again, you can refer to the plan. The hedgerow that's planned to be planted here, again, just 1 metre from the fence, many of these plants listed will attain a significant girth and height at maturity, creating similar problems to the aforementioned trees. So we respectfully request that the hedgerow be planted at, say, 2 metres rather than 1 metre from the fence. In the future, we will have no say in the management of these trees and hedgerows, so it is crucial for us to ensure a reasonable arrangement at the planning stage before planting commences. And in summary, we respectfully request that the hedgerow be planted 2 metres from the boundary fence, not 1, and that the proposed trees be planted 4 metres from the boundary fence, not 1. We think these are modest practical adjustments that will minimise the issues while still delivering the benefits of the scheme and will not impinge on any of the new homes. So the idea of this is to protect the amenity of the existing residents in line with both Canterbury Local Plan and National Planning Policy Framework, which require developments to be sympathetic to local character and to safeguard residential amenity. So in closing, we urge the committee to approve this application only with conditions that secure the above planting adjustments at the Manor Close boundary.
Thank you.
That way the development can proceed while ensuring that the
Thank
rights
you.
and well-being of existing residents are respected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I call the next speaker, who's Barney Parsons, Wincheap Society, please? Come forward. Again, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barney Parsons. I'm representing the Wincheap Society, which is the community association associated with Wincheap and the surrounding areas. Tonight's planning application makes little or no mention of the Wincheap Relief Road, which is possibly its least attractive aspect. The Wincheap Relief Road is attached to this particular planning application, so I think it's relevant to talk about it at this moment. You're discussing cosmetic designs tonight, and you're just assuming that the Section 278 works, which were given only superficial consideration over 7 years ago in the original planning application, are still relevant today. This site and the others which are being imposed on the Thannington and Wincheap areas of Canterbury, especially with the revisions in the local plan, which I think we're all fairly concerned about, will have a considerable and at present an uncertain effect on the local roads infrastructure, as well as the A28, which runs through the centre of Canterbury. There is now a need for a new comprehensive traffic study and traffic management plan for the whole area, which must consider the potential housing and leisure and industrial developments forecast. Ideally, the pooling of Section 278 monies for infrastructure monies from these developments could help fund an integrated scheme to manage traffic flows in the area and move it efficiently to its destination. The VISIM studies, noted by Colin Finch in his letter a long time ago in 2018 to CCC from KCC, to CCC Planning Department in 2018, produced blatantly erroneous results, which have been pointed out on many, many occasions, and it would be a waste of time to go into the details here. CCC and KCC need to do new traffic management studies. They're all out of date now, 7 years ago at least. These must be professionally carried out with good data and analysis, leading to believable and robust conclusions which are of use to professional planners. It is highly likely that construction of the gyratory will slow traffic flows and compromise safety for pedestrians and cyclists, if only as a result of the sharp bends and additional traffic lights that will be put in the system. The gyratory system, which is a part of this planning application, is a flawed concept. It has been a source of stress and I mean real stress, to a load of people in Wincheap. It's been a load source of stress for Wincheap's residents and businesses for 3 whole years now. It started all about 3 years ago. And no scheme yet, no announcements, no plans or anything actually really coming out, but it is a source of stress for a lot of people. CCC should also consider whether routing a one-way system through the industrial estate is compatible with the development of this brownfield site as proposed in the new local plan.
You've had the 3 minutes. Could you wind up, please?
Yeah. Can the proposal to carry out new studies be considered next week at the Joint Transportation Board meeting? Wincheap needs an up-to-date traffic management policy to go with the Council's new local plan and its revision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Judith Ashton, the agent, please?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to start by reminding members that this site forms part of the strategic allocation in the adopted local plan and benefits from outline consent for 400 dwellings and associated works, including the proposed Spine Road and associated access points onto Cochrane Road and Milton Manor Road. The outline consent confirmed the local highway network had capacity to accommodate the proposed development, such that it is not a matter for discussion here. Likewise, the Section 106 agreement provided for substantial financial contributions to mitigate the impact of the development. The principle of this scale of development on this site is thus well established. This application relates to the detailed design of phases 1 and 2, which together provide for 176 dwellings. Your officers have clearly and succinctly explained why the proposed development is acceptable in all respects. It has no objection from statutory consultees, including Natural England, a nutrient neutrality strategy having been agreed with them, such that there is no adverse impact on the Stod Marsh. The proposed mix includes 1-bed masonettes and 2 to 4-bed houses, 30% of which will be affordable, the affordable rented having been adjusted to provide more smaller units in accordance with your housing officer's recommendations. All dwellings are designed to nationally prescribed space standards and have access to their own gardens, with the affordable clustered into 3 groups that will complement that proposed on phases 3 to 5. The proposed design is traditional, 2-storey and in keeping with the character of the area, and reflects the approved parameter plans in terms of density and heights, as well as the approved design code document. The open space and place-based strategy reflects the approved outline consent, the proposed earthworks being as per the approved site-wide infrastructure works. The level of car parking accords with the council's parking standards, with visitor spaces evenly distributed. Likewise, the level of cycle parking is policy compliant, as is the level of EV charging provision. The proposed development will deliver industry-leading energy-efficient homes with air source heat pumps and other features, resulting in a carbon dioxide emissions saving of 58.6% over current building regulations. The surface water drainage strategy reflects that approved pursuant to the outline consent and looks to manage and maintain the 1 in 100-year storm event with allowance for climate change, reduce peak discharge rate and ensure there is no increase in off-site surface water flood risk. The ecological mitigation strategy reflects that approved at the outline consent and has been agreed with KCC. As you will be aware, this site is an important component of the Council's 5-year housing land supply, and a positive decision will help move the delivery of this site, including much needed affordable housing, forward. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to propose the officer's recommendation and seek a seconder. I do want to say that this is without prejudice to what I may decide during the debate, which is a comment I routinely make, but feel I need obviously to make it every time. So I'm proposing this, but I will respond to issues raised in the debate. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Prentice, thank you. Could I open the debate by saying I think we can accommodate the changes to the trees. I don't think that's a difficulty. I think we can make a condition. Is that correct? I could see noddings going on, so I just want to do that for a start so that we don't have to debate that point. It was well made, and I think we should take that point up, and you could work on what the wording would be, so that by the time we get to the recommendation, we know. Yeah. So can I open this for discussion? Councillor Buckman, then Mackenzie. I've got Old, and I need to take this in order. Those three first, and then we'll go on. I know there's about nearly everybody's got a hand up. Hold on. Let's take these three. Councillor Buckman.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight we'll be considering this application for 176 homes, and obviously the majority of these families need a house that they can call the home. My concerns is that the children who make up these families need a place at a local school so they can be enrolled in education. Young children shouldn't be driven miles to the schools, and if we're going for this modal shift away, driving children away from driving, children need to be able to walk or cycle. I mean, this is relevant to the ongoing thing. So but in this world of misinformation, it has been recently discovered that Kent County Council will not be building this promised school in Thannington in a time frame once agreed. And that's not a saving that Kent County Council should be proud of. How can we now, as councillors, officers and members of the public, have any confidence that any essential infrastructure and facilities are ever going to be built? More houses will need to increase the need for educational places. Now, I cannot think of a better committee to ask the following. So I would like the Chair and the Head of Planning to write to Kent County Council in regards to this. And the main points would include, what is the official status of that project? Is it delayed, paused or cancelled? What are the reasons for this delay? We all believed and were told at the presentations that the build was imminent. How are KCC holding up their 106 obligations to the community of Thannington? Have KCC allocated the SO 106 funding elsewhere? So, I am quite happy to help draft this letter because the communication from KCC has been poor. But as I say, there is no other place that I could take this. And as it is a development and there will be families here, I do feel that it is quite relevant. So I would like to ask Simon and the Chair if they are willing to write this letter. Thank you.
Okay, we seem to have a few responses to that. Simon, I think it would be better.
I think to go through the council. To go through the council.
Okay.
That would be the obvious thing to do.
The initial response from Simon, our Head of Planning, is that it would be better if you took this through the Kent County Councillor for the area. Have you tried that?
It is, but it is obviously part of planning as well. It is you are a planning officer or the head of planning right into another head of planning. I would have thought would have more weight than another councillor, or you would know better how to phrase the wording within a letter. So I would still ask someone in planning, the head of planning. I mean, I don't know if any other councillors would agree with that.
Just give me a minute to discuss this with Simon. Let me give the advice. So I've had advice, for those of you watching, from legal head of planning, and the advice would be perhaps we could have a discussion, Councillor Buckman, at the end of this meeting about how there's lots of different ways we could do this, about how best to get an answer to the questions. So we could get sort of updates. We could write different letters we could talk to. Because what we need to do, it's the education department. This is the problem. It's not quite as simple as head of planning to head of planning. So I think that rather than this is not to be solved within this application, but we can absolutely take that point seriously. And if we can have a meeting at the end, is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I understand it's education, but it's obviously a capital build as well. It's still, it's part of that. I assumed it was an agreement that was made through the development, as part of the development. But yeah, I don't want to take up time so much now because we want to get onto this, but I would appreciate it, a letter or the 106 money, because that's, you will understand it more as that's your job, basically. Thank you.
Okay, James, sorry, okay, let's agree to just have that meeting. I've already got several speakers, so just hold on, everybody else wanting to come in. So Councillor Mackenzie was next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm very concerned about where the affordable housing has been placed. I'm afraid I've read the officer's report and I see they have said that when the rest of the housing comes in phases 3 and 4 and whatever, that it will balance it out. I'm afraid I don't accept that. I think what it would actually do is create a series of clusters of affordable housing going through the site. And then we've still got the affordable housing lumped together in clumps rather than pepper potted throughout the site like they're supposed to be. And this risks the dignity of potential future occupiers of these dwellings, and it goes against our policy. So I would very much like to ask if we can, as we did with the Herne development, we have had this argument, this exact same argument very recently, like we did with the other development, can we defer this, get this settled before we go on? Because I don't think I can approve an application where the affordable housing is clumped together like this. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to come in on affordable housing before? Councillor Auld, because you were next anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On the issue of affordable housing, could the officers please help me understand the phasing of when the affordable housing is going to be built? Is it going to be built as the development progresses? Is it going to be built at the end? Do we know?
So Councillor Bothwell wanted to come in on affordable housing. I think we should take all matters on affordable housing together. Councillor Bothwell.
Just to say that I support Councillor Mackenzie's point about ghettoising the affordable housing, and I would recommend that it is distributed more evenly throughout the development. Did you hear that?
That we need to have it more distributed.
Yes.
It was in 2 patches, and there will be other patches when the rest of the development is built.
Yes, I concur with Councillor Mackenzie's view.
Okay. Affordable housing. Councillor Forrester, Councillor Stockwell. So Councillor Forrester first.
There we go. Sorry. Firstly, I agree with Councillor Bothwell and Councillor Mackenzie, but in addition to that, related to the siting of the affordable housing, it seemed nearly all the visitor parking for this plan was clustered by the affordable housing. And I was concerned that not only will you have the cluster of affordable housing, but you'll have all the visitor parking in the same area, making those houses feel they've got the comings and goings of potentially visitors to the non-affordable housing as well, which don't seem to have any visitor parking around them. Thank you.
Councillor Stockley, you're going to come in on affordable housing.
Yeah, I think it is, as has been said, it's our policy to distribute this as evenly as possible. This isn't distributed evenly, but gone on record previously on, I've got quite strong feelings on ghettoising our less fortunate citizens. And I think this is not acceptable as it's laid out. Thank you.
Okay, would you like to come back? Ask the planning officer to comment on all the points. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, in terms of the location of affordable housing, having reviewed the scheme, their location is considered to be suitable, purely because there needs to be a certain amount of affordable housing in each location from a management perspective, and they are distributed across the site. We have been liaising with our affordable housing officer, who is content with their distribution across phases 1 and 2. In terms of the parking provision in that corner, they are mainly where the flats are located, so there is additional parking associated with that. It's not all visitor parking, it is parking for the occupiers of those units as well. And the last point in terms of the delivery of affordable housing, that's secured within the Section 106 outline stage. So the affordable housing will be provided, I think, is prior to the occupation of 50% of the market units.
Yes, and I'd just like to remind people that in the application where we turned the houses round, that was a very bad design, and we turned them around, but we didn't separate them one from another. We kept the houses together because of this very point about the management of the site. I'm not the official in this case, but I'm just saying we managed to turn them round, but we didn't separate them out as a block of housing. So it was vastly improved and much safer. But just to say, Dan Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. I heard what you're saying. I agree with the point on the management of the social housing. Thank you, Kerry, for that one. But the principle of the part rent, part buy housing, that doesn't apply to that, and they could easily be put elsewhere within the development. So you're reducing the concentration, because I know that they are also within the clumps of the other social housing. So it would be perhaps sensible to move them into elsewhere in the development to lessen the impact, if you might say. Thank you.
Councillor Naomi Smith.
I'm moving on. Are we ready to move on from the social housing, or are we still talking about social housing?
Yes, we're happy to move on.
Okay, so I've got a few questions. Has this been through Design South East? Have they looked at the designs for this overall project? I have some concerns about the landscaping. I can't support this scheme as it is because the play areas are shoved to the corners of the site. Again, these have been proved to fail. And the majority of the housing is over the other side of a spine road to the open space. So the open space is actually quite restricted, and you've got this, the open space it seems very low because you've got this big attenuation pond at one point of the scheme. The hedgerow on the left-hand side of the plan, the long hedgerow, has no way through it to the next development. And that seems incredibly odd, that you'll end up wanting to break through that hedge because you're going to go to your mate who lives, you know, over the other side. And the same with the other things as well. I heard what the lady from Manor Close said, but I do also have concerns about the hedge being moved 2 metres, because what you'll end up with is a massive litter trap between the fence and the hedge that nobody will maintain. I know I have these problems on an estate that was built 20 years ago in my ward, and this is quite similar in layout. So these are the problems that I have. Can we move certainly the play areas so that they're overlooked and can be used by families, and not have these tiny leaps and laps that nobody ever uses? And I thought we'd got past this. Thank you. I know that's one of them. Yeah, it's one of them. It's sort of, when you look at the coloured one, it's got the orange dots as well.
What we're doing is trying to show you the plan where this is 1 quarter, so that we can look at Because I think some of the conversations we're having are about this in isolation, whereas of course it's just phase. Yeah, well, I'm just for everybody else, so that if we can get it, we're going to get that picture up, and then that'll give you some idea.
Can you look at that?
Yeah, I think that is the
Bits here.
yeah,
Through.
yeah. If we
Chair, also my question about Design South East, if they did a review of this bigger project.
Yeah, so this is the plan of the whole site. So phase one, I haven't got a pointer, but phase one is in the bottom
Bottom
right-hand corner. Is that sort of quarter of the site. So there is relatively less landscaping just in that section taken as a in isolation. But you need to see the site, the 400 house development in the context of the overall picture. So you do have quite a significant amount of open space running through the centre of the site. Then on the left-hand side, there's a large amount of open space, as there is to the top, the north, quite top quadrant. So overall, this site does have quite a significant amount of open space, certainly compared to a lot of other sites that we've seen in the past.
Okay, Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. I take the point of showing the open space on this plan, but I don't think that addresses the points that Councillor Smith raised about the hedgerow going between two parts of the site and the likelihood of people making their own ways through that hedge at their convenience, and the distribution of the play and recreation areas. If anything, this demonstrates even more so that orange dot in the bottom right-hand corner is right on the far edge of the site. And that's the play area I think Councillor Smith was referring to. Yeah, and the other one is the orange dots. Basically, you can see how distributed they are, and that one on the right is right at the edge of the development.
I mean, I understand because Councillor Smith took me around the estate she's referring to, and I do understand that I think there's 5 play areas on this site, having them all separated off like that, rather than having one large one in the middle or whatever it would be, is the problem. But I have to say that the way we've got it in terms of 2017 plan, this is what we've asked for. I don't think it's all that different in the new draft plan. I think we've still got the small... We have. So our problem is that we don't require, we're not requiring. That's our difficulty with what we've got here. What we've got here does conform to our request and our directions to planners. I think I'm trying to be simple about this, but because it isn't easy, but that's as I see it. Now I'll ask Simon to come back in.
Just also quickly, So yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to also point out that the landscape strategy, so the landscape plan that you see in front of you, has already been agreed separately. So we're not looking at that as part of this application as a strategy. We're obviously looking at the detail of this development, but the strategy has been agreed previously.
Let me see. I've had. Yes.
Because I still haven't had my question answered about whether this has gone through Design South East for review. And I do feel, yes, I understand that this has been hanging around so long because of judicial review and stuff like that, but we're creating bad spaces here. And it's really not what we should be doing as a city council. But if you can answer my question about the design review, Design South East, thank you.
Thank you, but as I say, we've still got these small play areas in our new open spaces strategy. That's the difficulty we've got. We can't, we are not rewriting it in this planning committee, just trying to say. But yes, I will ask planning officer to come back on that point.
The scheme, so far as I'm aware, hasn't been through design review. However, throughout the process, advice has been taken internally from our urban design and architectural specialists over the course of the application.
I think it's Councillor Thomas next.
Just a bit of clarification, Chair. I'm assuming this is part of the outline planning permission that was done in 2017, or is this a new application completely?
To answer, I'll ask Kerry to explain.
Sorry, so what we have at the minute, we have an outline permission which grants basically the principle for 400 dwellings. As part of that permission, various parameter plans were approved. They were fully considered by the council at that point in time, with conditions being imposed to mitigate those impacts. And what we have now is a reserved matters application that's being brought forward in line with those agreed principles as part of the outline permission. So for the reasons set out in the report, officers are satisfied that the way that the site has been brought forward for phases 1 and 2 is in line with those overarching principles.
That's what I thought, Chair. So we can't do anything about this application anyway. We can advise on moving some of the hedgerow and stuff to mitigate it, but this is why I don't like outline applications. So thank you.
Yes, it's a reserved matter. So this is what we were saying at the beginning. So we need to be very clear. A lot of this is already consented. I mean, maybe we have to have a halfway house with the hedging. Lady explained exactly. I mean, I wrote down the distances, but maybe I too take the point that we can get a corridor of litter. We have a few of those on a few of our estates already. However, equally, we must acknowledge that putting trees right next to somebody else's fencing is not okay. I didn't think that would work once the lady described the width of the trees when they finally grow. I mean, this is always the problem, isn't it? They look all right at the time, but then later on they, So, I mean, maybe what we have to do with that is go back and advise them. I don't know, or can you? Okay, we can make a condition within a certain distance. The problem is, maybe in terms of the hedging, we've got two different opinions about what distance that should be. But I think regarding the trees, that's not a problem. Yeah.
No trees.
No, I don't. Sorry. I don't want to go down the road of removing either trees or hedges. We know perfectly well that for biodiversity and for improvements to it, and given we're concreting over so much here, we need to keep them. But we need to keep them mindful of other people's amenity. Councillor Thomas, did you want to come back?
Yes, please, Chair. On that side, I do a lot of maintenance in those type of properties, and unfortunately, they become a bit of no man's land. So if a resident that is already living there and having this application put on them, I think it's quite right that we should listen to the neighbours and ask for their suggestions to be put forward, and that's what we should be doing. If it creates a corridor of rubbish, unfortunately, that's what you get, because you end up with these sites and you get a fence this side, fence the other side. This becomes a bit of no man's land, and everyone moans about, you know, someone wants to hedge higher, so the neighbour, it's a nightmare. So, yes, I think we do need to listen to the resident on this side. Thank you.
Yes, so I was happy with those distances because the hedging wasn't as far as the trees. And I think with the trees, that if they're going to be that size, and I'm not an expert, I'm just understanding that the lady's done her research, and I think that that's what we should do. Okay, so now where am I? Councillor Prentice, I think, next.
Thank you, Chair. And just looping back to something Councillor Buckman said at the start, which I very much support. There was a point that was really well made around primary school provision, but there's a slightly different sort of aspect of that, and it's relevant, is regarding the point our public speaker made about traffic management. Because the closer and more accessible a primary school is, the fewer car journeys are made, and the more healthy, active travel journeys are made. On foot, cycling, wheeling to their local school. And that's entirely in line with what we want in our draft local plan. So I do think that that point about traffic management is worth looking at again, so that we can encourage sustainable, healthy journeys from a very, very early stage in this development. Because anything that encourages additional car journeys, there will be some, obviously, but anything that encourages unnecessary additional car journeys, I think is unwelcome. Thank you.
I think that we need to separate out the funding for the roads that the gentleman referred to and this particular reserve matters, because they're not on this particular reserve matters. So he was talking about the gyratory and other access roads from Wincheap, but this is not. Simon's just read the list again, and we can go back to it, but it's phase 1 and 2, and that's it. It is, you know, as Councillor Thomas said, annoying when you're dealing with reserve matters, because you're dealing with phase by phase by phase, which is why we wanted to have a look at the overall open space to make sure that it wasn't all quite as small as on this bit, because we didn't think it was, but it was just a question of checking that. On this one, the gentleman was right, there are funding and section, whatever it was, I think 106 monies, but it, 278, sorry, but it wasn't, we're not actually consenting that at this point. Councillor Mackenzie next, and then Dan Smith. Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Apologies if I missed it in the reports, but could you please tell us a bit more about how pedestrians will cross the spine road in another thing, like what pedestrian crossings there will be and how many? And also with the bus stop that's right in the middle of the spine road, I was thinking maybe it'd be worth actually having 2 bus stops along there, one on each end, so it's less walking for people to get to the bus stops. So are these things that we can deal with and condition?
I think we should have a reply to that straight away. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The spine road through the site has already been approved via a separate reserve matters applications, and the pedestrian locations were determined through that application. This reserve matters application is consistent with that, so the pedestrian locations and crossings, etc., they're all in the correct places.
I have got Dan Smith, Councillor Smith. Dan Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have 3 things really. Firstly, I don't think I got an answer to the current or affordable homes, whether they could be moved elsewhere in the development because they're not quite the same as the social housing. To pepper pot that, so I'd like an answer on that, please. Secondly, appreciate the strategy's been laid out, but I think the long part that was referred to earlier could easily be moved up to the Manor Close boundary, which would help alleviate the problem we've got with the hedging there and swap that for the housing. So it would also make it more central to the development on which I think is the top right corner of bottom right corner, I beg your pardon, of the current bit of the plan. And thirdly, I agree completely with Councillor Thomas and Councillor Prentice on the traffic management plan, that I appreciate it's part of the wider development and it's not something that's necessarily applicable to this application, but a 7-year-old traffic management plan after we've had Saxon Fields developed and the issues with the primary school and things, there is a considerable problem with traffic that's going to grow and get worse. So whilst it is separate from this particular application, it would certainly be worth pushing to get a renewal of that and have a proper, more modern assessment rather than a 7-year-old one, which I think one of the speakers referred to. So if I could have a reply on the first point in particular and possibly the second.
Actually, Councillor Smith, I think you need to repeat it more clearly because we didn't quite catch it. We didn't quite get what was being moved, what you want to be moved about on the first point.
There were two different types of housing that were referred to in the social and affordable. I think one was in blue and one was in pardon? Shared ownership. Thank you. And the shared ownership ones can be pepper potted because they're not the same in the social management structure as the social rented houses. So, and they're actually clumped in the same clumps. So the blue ones, in effect, could be pepper potted much easier. And it may be worth looking at that to see if it can be done.
Yeah, I think the shared ownership accommodation is spread across the site in the same way as the social rented accommodation. And the same principle applies because with a shared ownership property, the housing association still owns that property, part of it, and the occupier has a mortgage on the rest of it. So the management and maintenance responsibilities do still apply to the shared ownership as they do to rented accommodation.
You want to come back on that? There are 3 different sections on this section.
Yeah.
And if there are 3 on every one, and there's 4 of them, there's quite a number of different parts. But anyway,
yeah, appreciate
you want to come back? Go on.
Yeah, quickly. It was my sister lived in a part by accommodation in Canterbury, and they are handled quite differently from the pure social rented accommodation. So it's entirely within the bounds of a housing association. They have less visits, less control over it. It's a much less frequent occurrence. So it may, it's something that could be considered and done much easier. Thank you.
The next person I've got is Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm amazed that our accommodation is needed. We've got officers. Well, it's not our responsibility to look after socially rented or whatever property, but I'm astonished that we're still quite happy to put these in blocks for the convenience of maintenance and management. What's wrong with walking 30 yards to the next one? It's not exactly brain surgery, is it? You put them in blocks. We've got this at Talmead in my ward. We've got huge blocks of social housing, which I have to tread very carefully at this point. If you get a number of people who do not look after their property, it brings the entire area down. And this isn't restricted to social housing, it applies equally to everything. But if you put these houses in blocks, you risk this situation. We've seen it so many times, and yet we're still doing it. Why can't the people responsible for the maintenance of these properties get in their van and drive 30 yards to the next one? They don't have to be in blocks, but apparently they do. Puzzling. Secondly, I'd like to know about the charging of electric vehicles, EV charging. It was said earlier that all residents will have access to EV charging. I wonder how this works on communal car parks, because as we've seen, some of the EV charging that's put in commercially is horrendously expensive compared to your own personal tariffs that you'll be getting from an electricity company. I'm interested in that. Thank you.
I'll ask the officer to answer that last question. Thank you.
EV charging has been provided in line with the original permission, which required 10%. It's provided throughout the site and in communal areas. In terms of additional EV charging, that would be provided in line with building regulations.
Sorry, Chair, I've no idea what was just said. Could we clarify that? So you're saying 10% of the properties will have EV charging?
Through the permission, 10% has been secured. However, EV charging is provided throughout the site and building regulations require additional EV charging over and above what's provided through this application.
Okay, and how is that delivered? Who by? How's it charged? Do you need a card? You know, as yet unknown. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think just to clarify also that the every dwelling now under the building regulations is required to have an EV charging point. But the point that Kerry was making is that in the communal areas that there needs to be 10% provision of EV charging, and obviously we can't. The cost of electricity is not something that we can look at through planning. All we can do is ensure that. You know, as far as our powers go, that we, you know, that these things are fitted. But the building regulations have effectively taken over that responsibility now.
Thank you, Simon. It's not the cost of the electricity that's the problem. It's what, you know, as we've done in Canterbury, you put in a commercial company puts in a charging point. They want to recoup the money from that charging point. Some chargers cost more than running a petrol car. You know, they are horrendously expensive. And this is something we can, at this stage, put some thought into. You know, if we just leave it that the company who builds the thing puts in, I don't know, 10% in the communal spaces and charges 4, 5, 6 times the standard rate of electricity, they're obviously not going to get used. But I realise we can't legislate for that, but we can actually say that we need to look into it. It's something that our planners can look at, because you know it is. If you go to any motorway service station and try filling up your EV, it will cost you more than it would when driving a diesel. So you know, I'm just thinking that people who may not have access to driveways will be stuck with these very expensive charges. That's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
We're just wondering, this sounds a bit more like a new policy for the local plan, actually. I mean, I don't think, you know, we are, of course, operating under 2017 here, but we've got the new one sitting there, and it does sound like a good idea. I'm not sure we can retrospectively start making any difference to this particular development. You know, we are operating with the parameters that we've already got here, but I think it's a good point, definitely a good point. Councillor Buckman's my next person on my list.
Thank you for that. Throughout the responses from the public, a few people mentioned about CCTV over Larky Woods, because that is quite a prime location for fly tipping. And I was just wondering, is there any way that the developer in the locations would be able to sort of pay and install it, but obviously not monitor it, but if they would be willing to pay for any sort of CCTV to stop any fly tipping that could likely occur? And then my second point or question would be on the Spine Road, you've got you have the bus stops there, and in the documents it says that Stagecoach have supported the improvements to bus stops along Cochrane Road, but will Stagecoach come up with any sort of commitment to running an actual service? Because obviously Ashford Road really struggles with buses. I mean, someone would be able to shout out, but I'm sure they finish around 6 o'clock. And if they're struggling in the same location, are they equally struggle to run a bus service here? Thank you.
I don't think we can do more than create the opportunities for the buses to run in terms of what this application can cover and can't cover. But I do think, you know, our negotiations with Stagecoach going forward as a council are very important. I think we all know that. And I agree with you. Ashford Road is not well served. Councillor Forrester, next, please.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd echo what Councillor Buckman said on the bus service. There is no bus service weeknights between Ashford and Canterbury after 5:30 at all. It's not possible to get a bus, which is a problem if we're having a bus first policy. Secondly, I wanted to go back to affordable housing. It may be that I haven't understood the answer, but on the proposals of Councillor Mackenzie, Bothwell, Smith about pepper potting the affordable housing, there seems to be a reluctance, and is that a can't or a won't pepper pot? I'm not clear. Thank you.
So it depends what you think pepper potting is, doesn't it, really? I mean, I thought on this section, there are 3 different sections. They're not all together. They're not in a block. There are 3 different sections of relatively small numbers. So from my point of view, I actually thought the argument was made. Obviously, that's not what people agree with. Shall we get the whole site up so that you can see all of them? And as with the open spaces, you might be able to see how distributed or how hopefully well distributed. I haven't re-looked at the whole plan for this. I did look at it for the open space. Yeah, let's do that, and then you can have a look. And
maybe I can break it into 2 parts as well, that question. So there's the question of pepper potting all affordable housing, and then there's the proposal that's put forward to separate shared ownership, which could become full ownership, of course, from the social rents. And the argument was that the partial ownership would have the same maintenance, but it would not necessarily forever. So is there a reason why those couldn't be distributed more evenly across this part of the site or the entire site? Because I suspect, I don't want to speak for the committee, but I suspect if we're dissatisfied with the proposal here and that pattern is echoed across the whole site, the committee is unlikely to be satisfied with the entire site.
the officer will talk you through that bit.
Thank you. So in terms of the location of affordable housing across the whole site, what we have here is a drawing that indicatively shows how the affordable accommodation could be provided across the 400 units. So the green squares on the screen are the private ones and the blue ones are the affordable units. So the purpose of this is, again, just to show you how the affordable housing could be provided across the site to avoid sort of large clusters, which seems to be the concern of members.
So those blue points at the outer edges of the site are the affordable housing. That's correct. Thank you.
Sorry, I think I've got quite a number of people who want to come in again. I think I ought to give people who haven't... Councillor Bothwell, did you want to come back in? I think I ought to go back through people who haven't just spoken, and then we'll go round everybody. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's about a couple of the other reserved matters which we haven't discussed yet. One is on shared cycleways and footways, and the other is on the sewage treatment and nutrient levels. I just wanted to ask the question of officers. People objecting online on the portal have said that they're worried about the width of the shared footway, cycleway, saying that it's of an inadequate width. And I would like to say, both as a pedestrian and a cyclist, that as a pedestrian, I do find it very disconcerting walking along shared cycleway footways. In the Stour Valley path, it's very disconcerting. You can't relax. You have to be continually sort of alert to possible bicycles passing in every direction. And I think it would be better in principle, if we're going to encourage people to move away from the car, to have separate footways and cycleways and not have combined footway cycleways in order to make them more pleasant, particularly for pedestrians. So that's one issue, and whether those, there's also, I think someone on the portal talked about the connection of the footway cycleway to Cockering Road and said that was potentially dangerous. I don't know whether these issues have been addressed by the developer. And the second issue was on sewage treatment and nutrient levels. I just wonder whether officers could assure me that the development of the sewage treatment system is not going to add to nutrient levels in the Stour catchment and Stodmarsh. Thank you.
Can I ask you? Thank you.
In terms of the first point around the cycleways and footways within the site, they were part of the Spine Road application, so they've already been determined. The 176 units that form part of this application have been brought forward in line with the Spine Road application. So again, the connections for the dwellings are correct. In terms of the nutrient neutrality, the developers worked up a scheme to achieve nutrient neutrality, and we've consulted with Natural England on that scheme, who have raised no objections. Thank you.
There's not much information there. I just wonder whether you can provide clarity on exactly how nutrient neutrality is going to be maintained. And this footway cycleway is actually one of the reserved matters. So it's the developer has applied for approval of the footway cycleway under this particular application. So it's presumably not already been approved. Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking for permission again.
I think the point about the cycle and footways is that we're not quite sure whether this particular point was about the ones in here or the ones on the previous application. Do you know?
No, I'm referring to the ones which are part of this application. It's shown on the plan as a footway cycleway.
I mean, as far as we're aware, Councillor Bothwell, these cycle paths and the shared nature of them is quite commonplace, and we've gone along with that, and that, in fact, is something that, well, I don't know, this is going to sound a bit kind of anecdotal, but it's my understanding that this slows everything down and is quite commonplace in many developments and isn't usually a problem. So I don't know what you're talking about Stour Valley Way, but I mean, of course, that cycle path is in dire need of improvement, and until we've sorted out the ownership of that particular patch of ground, which, as you know, is close to my heart, we can't do it. So it's Sustrans are all ready to do it and widen that. It's a wider path than it looks. Or appears, because it's overgrown. But at the moment, that's in abeyance. But I don't think we're about to go back on shared cycling and, because the whole site is based on sharing it. So unless, again, new local plan, future developments maybe, but I think, yeah, that's right.
The sewage issue, I haven't had a response on the sewage issue. I don't know exactly what's been put in place to ensure nutrient neutrality.
Thank you. So in terms of the surface water and the nitrates, this is being mitigated on site through the applicant's SUD system, sustainable urban drainage. So they'll go through a series of ponds and clean up the water. In terms of the phosphorus, this is being mitigated through a connection to the wastewater treatment works at Hoplands Farm, which has credits available to mitigate this scheme.
Okay, I think Councillor Prentice next.
Just returning to the bus issue, Chair, it's encouraging to see the infrastructure in place for the bus service. And obviously other councillors have already mentioned the lack of frequency as it exists already. I recognise this might not be something we can condition, but could we ask our planning department to ask Stagecoach if it is minded to increase the service, bearing in mind that with not just this phase, but all of the other phases of the development will create a more commercially viable service, not just for, daytime up until sort of 5 o'clock, 5:36 in the evening, but into the evenings and on Sundays, so that we can boost the evening economy, so that people can get to where they need to get to outside of normal working hours, whatever they might be. Because people's travel habits do change and have changed since the pandemic. And that is my broad concern, actually, is that because some of these issues haven't been looked at much, and because a lot's changed since COVID and the way people travel has changed since COVID, I do think we need to look at the potential for, commercially viable services in the evenings. We do need to be looking, and I know this is not what we're necessarily here to do tonight, but it's a sort of a polite ask, really, a request to look at what is going to be viable in the future, look at what they can provide. There's new housing proposed in other surrounding areas. There's this considerable development. It all makes a bus service more viable. What are they going to do about it?
We can ask them, can't we, for an update on what they intend to do, definitely. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I'm going to be a bit like a dog like a bone, and I'm going to have to go back to affordable housing. So I do agree with other colleagues who have spoken on this. Looking at that map that you pulled out on the screen, to me, that showed concentrations of affordable housing. It was like looking at a heat map of where the affordable housing tenants will be living. And I really just don't think it's good enough. And I can't move past that yet. This risks stigmatizing them, taking away their dignity. And, I can't remember which one of our colleagues it was. I think it might have been Councillor Stockley, who said, in terms of the management, can the managers not just walk a few more meters to the next property in the development to manage it? Like, do they need to all be concentrated in a few locations to be managed? And it's not even that big of a space. It's roughly the size between Westgate Towers and the Cathedral. Be like 30 seconds if they've got like a little golf cart car to go around in for their management duties. So two questions have been asked. Can this be deferred for correction because it is significant? And is it a matter that you won't or can't defer it for correction? And, neither of those questions were answered, and we would like an answer, please. Ultimately, I have to say, what's the point in having a pepper pot policy if we're not going to use it? And, we have to be respectful to the people that are going to live in these properties. And that is at the forefront of my mind when I'm saying this.
We're just going to come back to you on what pep potting may or may not mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's no definition of pepper potting, but what it's aiming to do is to spread the affordable housing so it's not in one big block, for example, within the site. And what the developer has done in this case has split up the affordable housing. It's in clusters of a number of dwellings, but it's still spread throughout the site. So I think it would be difficult to say that that's not a form of pepper potting. In addition to that, as I said, the housing associations, when they're taking on properties and managing them, then they want to have the properties together. Things like common boundaries are important to them, parking areas and so on. So they do want to have clusters of properties. They wouldn't want, for example, one market, one affordable, one market, one affordable, and so on, it just wouldn't work. And I've never seen any example anywhere where that's happened. So I think what we've got here is probably quite, I would say, quite a good pepper potting mix in the context of the requirements of the RP, the Housing Association.
Councillor Naomi Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's pepper potting. I think it's pepper clumping. It reminds me of the booth maps, if you know what the booth maps are. But I want to come back to the landscape. We've agreed that we will look at the trees for the people on Manor Close. I must get the name of the place right. And the hedgerows there. Can we look at these hedgerows that dissect the site? Because I think they're problematic. I'm not against the hedgerows being there, but you need gaps and desire lines through those hedgerows so that people can move throughout the whole development when it's built out. Because currently it's, you've got this, and it's the affordable housing that's blocked in by a big hedge. Not the affordable, the social rent housing that's blocked in by the long hedge. And there could be, you want to be able to get to the facilities on the other side because you've got such a tiny, useless play area on this side. So can we look at what the desire lines would be through this site?
I think we could add some conditions about the gaps to the point about the trees being moved in the direction that we've already discussed, and I think we agree that we can do that. I think you're right. I mean, we need gaps, so otherwise people will make them. So it's best to have them. It's a good point. Councillor Dan Smith. I think I've got to the end of my list, so...
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, dragging this on a little bit. Just on that last point about the hedgerow at the back, not the one against Manor Close, the one on the long side, which would be, I think, to the northwest. I wonder if the officers can clarify, because it looks to me like there's 3 different access points along that hedge. If you could clarify that there are, so there's one, they're more or less divided from the big one in the sort of top left side of it, one in the centre and one on the right. But if you could, smaller ones that by footpaths. So if you could clarify that, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
You're right. Okay. Any other contributions? So I think that we need to go back to take the proposal and take the vote. I do want people to be mindful of the fact that although individuals seem to feel that we should have one affordable housing, one market rent, one affordable housing, one market rent, what we've got is 5 clumps. What we've heard from the head of planning is that the developer will do that because that's the way they get them acquired by housing associations. I did think that was pepper potting, so that for me was what I thought we were aiming for, because if you remember in the past, a lot of those housing association houses were all together, and we are separating them up. I appreciate that, but I don't actually think that the developer will want to change this, and that's the advice from planning officers. So I appreciate people feel strongly about that. In regard to the trees, did we have a wording for what we might say there? So on the trees, we felt that, I think in summary, because remember the hedges are much closer. The hedges were 2 metres. I think Councillor Thomas was saying that you will create some sort of gaps, but that is inevitable because we need to bear in mind that the trees need to be further away. They're 4 metres. I don't think that will create the litter gap. It'll be the hedging, but the hedging request is for 2 metres because of the width. And so I think that is reasonable and we should stick with that. Yeah, okay. And we also want to say in that condition, and we may just have to go off and word it, not try and do too much detail now, but we will say there should be gaps in all the hedges to allow access to all the different open spaces. That's the correct... Sorry, what did you call it?
Natural desire lines.
Thank you. We'll have that. Thank you. So those two things will be clear. There will be one condition about the trees and the hedges and the gaps. I don't think we've come up with any other conditions. I think that we are going to ask Stagecoach what they're doing about the buses. There will be provision for... sorry, can't take anything just at the minute. We'll go back on that. On the school, Dane, we'll have a discussion afterwards. I'll now put the proposal. So the proposal is to grant subject to safeguarding conditions. And I had a seconder, Paul Prentice. So could we run the vote, John? Thank you.
Okay, that has carried. 6 in favour and 7 abstained.
Thank you very much, everybody. So we now move on to the next application. I don't know whether people who came for that one just want to leave, but I'm not holding a gap in the meeting for that. I think if people just could...
We don't need that. Chair, we've got the wording.
Yeah, no, I don't need it. No, it's all right. Right, thank you. So we move on to the next application. That's application number CA 25 01206, 2 Beresford Road, Whitstable. Could I ask Emily Rule, the planning officer, to introduce the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application is for 7 three-storey terrace dwellings on 2 Beresford Road in Whitstable. With regards to the site's location, it's outlined in red on this plan and it's within the urban area of Whitstable, so it's considered to be acceptable in principle. The application site is shown on this photo on the screen and it comprises some existing industrial units that would be demolished to facilitate the new dwellings. The existing street scene of Beresford Road is shown in this photo here with the application site highlighted with a red arrow, and it comprises a mixture of residential and commercial development. To the southwest of the application site, you have 4 to 7 Beresford Road, which has a collection of terraced dwellings, and the eastern boundary of the application site, 23 to 31 Beresford Road, also has some residential dwellings as well. With regards to the character and appearance of the proposed dwellings, they would have a traditional design and they would have a similar scale to the existing residential development in the street. These images here are just showing how they would fit in the context of the residential development to the eastern boundary, and we're recommending conditions regarding external materials and joinery to ensure they're sympathetic to the nearby conservation area. I've got the front and rear elevations on the screen in front of you. So the top elevation is a proposed front elevation and the bottom on the screen is the proposed rear elevation. In respect of neighbouring amenity, the grey on the left-hand photo shows the footprint of the proposed dwellings. They're quite similar to the residential development to the east. They just extend slightly further to the rear. In terms of overlooking, there's approximately a 30-metre separation distance between the rear elevation of the proposed dwellings and the rear elevation of dwellings on Hamilton Road to the north. The existing footprint of the units on the site does extend further to the north than the current proposals. So we do feel it is sufficiently, the level of overlooking is, we do feel that there wouldn't be an acceptable level of overlooking, especially as there's a degree of mutual overlooking in the vicinity as well. I've got some floor plans on these slides here. So the first picture at the top is just showing the first floor plan, which has a window to the rear serving the living room, and it shows the accommodation in the roof, so the attic, which also has dormer windows, so it would have a similar outlook, the dormer windows, to the windows on the first floor serving the living room. Other considerations in the assessment were the flood risk of the site, and a flood risk assessment was submitted and reviewed by the Environment Agency, who confirmed they had no objections to the proposals subject to a condition securing the mitigation measures in the flood risk assessment. This was missed off the suggested conditions on the report, so this has been included here for your reference, and it just secures the mitigation measure of the floor levels being set at a certain height to prevent any reduce the impact of flooding. A preliminary route appraisal was also submitted and reviewed by KCC Ecology, who confirmed they're happy with the conclusions of that report. So none of the buildings were suitable for, didn't offer potential for roosting bats, and they've recommended an enhancement plan. And in terms of contamination, an environmental assessment was submitted and reviewed by the environmental health team at the council, who agreed with the conclusions of the report that further investigation was needed with regards to contamination on the site, and these have been added as conditions onto the list that is on the report in front of you. So for the reasons mentioned in this presentation and within the report that you have, it's recommended the application is granted subject to safeguarding conditions and a legal agreement regarding SAMs. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any speakers for this application. So on the same basis, I would like to propose that we grant subject to legal agreement and safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Dan. That's Councillor Dan Smith, John, seconding. So could I open this for discussion and debate and questions? Councillor Naomi Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions about this site. Whilst I'm in favour of a brownfield site like this and the high density, it's ideal for what we should be doing. However, I don't understand the ordinance datum of 6.10 metres and what on earth that means. Does this mean that you can't have living below 6 metres of whatever the ordinance datum is? Because I don't understand what that is. And that there was a sequential test was done, because I've had this happen I've got flood risk 3 in my area as well, for the same reasons, because this is all to do with coastal flooding, that stuff has been refused. And this seems, I get very confused, and I can understand why people who put applications in and get them refused will say, well, why is this being approved when it is in flood risk 3, and they could possibly find something else. Will the ground floor be raised? I mean, I just don't understand what ordinance datum of 6.10 metres is. If you can explain that to me, please.
Yeah, of course. So above ordinance datum, that's a national average sea level. So it's measured as height in metres above this average sea level. And it just ensures that the floor area of habitable areas like living rooms, bedrooms and so on are that measurement above that level. So I think it was 10 in this case. Yeah, 6.10. Yeah. With regards to the sequential test, as the site already had development on it, we don't require a sequential test. I think it's policy CC6. They did a flood risk assessment which kind of satisfied the requirements of the exceptions test. So that's why a sequential test wasn't needed.
So the ordinance datum, because I don't know what it is it that the properties, the floor levels have to be 6.10 metres above high water, or I'm getting confused about what it is, and if anybody knows how it works.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in here. So the ordnance datum level is the level above sea level. So it's the level of land in relation to the sea. So all land is measured in relation to that OD. In this case, I don't know what the level of the land is, Emily. Do you know what have you got details? Well, it's like this. I don't know. Where we are will be some number of meters above, well, maybe below, but it should be above sea level. So everything is measured in relation to this sea level. Yeah. So basically, so for example, here, the land level might be 6 meters above sea level, but the requirement is that the floor area should be 6.10 or whatever. Yeah. So it's in relation. So the site will have an OD, and its floor level should be raised to a particular OD as set out by the Environment Agency. Sorry.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about energy strategy. I didn't notice anything in the officer's report about energy strategy, and I haven't seen anything on the online portal. I just wondered whether we could ask the applicant to submit an energy strategy, as we have in the past with many developments, with their aspirations for their energy efficiency of the development, insulation levels, use of heat pumps, etc., etc. We have requested this from developers in the past.
I think the answer is we don't routinely ask with small numbers of houses, but we could ask. Let's check out what's been said already. It's under 10 dwellings, and that means that we haven't got a policy requirement to enforce anything. I mean, we could ask them, but there's no teeth. Is that the right word? Is that the right word? To it.
Could we ask them to provide an energy strategy? I mean, it encourages people to think about the energy efficiency of buildings, which is absolutely critical both for the environment and for fuel poverty.
It also increases the marketability of the property.
Really, what's happening? Excuse me, sorry, just a sec. So really, Simon's just repeating what I've said, only in more detail. So we could put a condition on, but planning would not recommend that because we have no policy requirement to do so. So it's not a reasonable thing to do when we don't have to. And we might want to have a policy, but the point is we don't. So that's where we are.
It wouldn't meet the tests of the national policy framework, which says it has to be a necessity. There's no necessity in policy to.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't meet those tests.
Yeah.
So that's why we would recommend it.
Okay. I mean, Simon's just saying it doesn't meet NPPF testing because there's no requirement on this small number of houses to do that. So, it hasn't got teeth. And it's not a good idea, really, is it, to put conditions on that we can't do anything with? We'd look a bit, well, it could be, seen as unreasonable.
We could put an informative measure.
Okay, we'll do that then.
The activity would encourage the applicant to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, compromise is this. Informative to the. So how would you like to word it? I mean, just say again what it is you particularly.
Basically, we would like to encourage the developer to consider the energy efficiency of the dwellings and aim to meet a very high standard above the level of building regulations. Above and beyond building regulations, yeah.
Sorry, I haven't got my mic on. Sorry, we know we've got future home standards coming down the line and they will be higher. So yeah, I mean, I think we can say that. So an informative is the compromise position. Now, I think it was Councillor Dan Smith.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the informative is actually very close to where I was going, but I just wondered what the draft local plan says on this, if that would be worth mentioning as part of that informative, if there is an because this is definitely the trajectory that housing is going in, and you would need a more efficient, fuel-efficient structure. It also makes the properties more marketable, so hopefully the applicant would take that on board. Yeah.
So, yes, so the draft local plan, you're talking about what standards is that going to require? Well, we started out with net zero, but we're actually going to end up not at that point because inspectors are throwing out net zero requirements on viability grounds. So I can't remember the exact language, but it's net zero on occupation. And Keith will know better than probably anybody else here. That does not mean all the work going into building it will achieve that standard. So, but that will probably be where we end up, simply because of the local plan cases that are coming through the inspectorate at the minute and what they're achieving. You know, we set our bar quite high, the 20% biodiversity net gain, the net zero entirely on houses, and we're not going to get rid of it, but we probably will have that. But that we can still check. So I just had a meeting actually with Andrew Thompson last week with Mel, and we talked about this. So that's why I've got a bit of up-to-date information, but Simon can check that. We can check where we've got to with that wording. Okay.
I think that's also why it's helpful to have that kind of wording in an informative, because we're at an informative point in this legally. But to make the informative as strong as possible, given the trajectory going forwards, would be helpful. Thanks.
I think this is all just to do with, you know, where we worked out our viability in the first stages, probably actually the second stages of the plan in the working group. We had a better house price average sale, not only locally but nationally, than we've got now. So that's probably, you know, and the building costs have gone up, all of that. I mean, not that we like compromising on that basis, but that's what inspectors are requiring. So, you know, we've got to be sensible to get something through, to get as much as we can. Is there anybody else? So Councillor Mackenzie, then Councillor Buckman.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, generally, like Naomi Smith, very in favour of high density homes on brownfield land. So that's good to see come before us. I'm very mindful of the point that Councillor Turnbull called this in on, which was about the window dormers to the rear. But when I was looking at this, there was the houses that are already there, that these would essentially be an extension of. They have window dormers looking out onto the gardens of the houses on Hamilton Road. So surely, if it's already the case, then is it an issue? Like, has there been communication with the residents in those existing properties to find out whether it's been a problem? I suppose I'll leave it there.
Yes, thank you. I mean, as I understand it, I mean, I saw that too. I went on the Google Maps and saw the houses with the dormers already in the. But I think the point is the distance. So you've got a good long garden in the back of the house already existing, and these have got a good long back garden as well. So it's more than the required distance. I think the required distance is 25 or something, isn't it? So it's actually more than that. And so that's the key thing. It's the sight line and the distance, as I understand it. So we wouldn't have a problem with them on that basis. So, Councillor Buckman.
Thank you. As I understand, Nelson Road is quite close to this Hamilton Road, and I know in Canterbury we've got Whitefriars as well. But my point is about Swift bricks. I don't know, what is the sort of the policies on having, I don't know if it would work here, but the actual general policy on having Swift bricks, because obviously to help with the Swifts. I don't know if it would, or back boxes and things like that on houses, because obviously they're community-led strategies. And I'm sure there was people looking around Whitefriars the other day to install that sort of thing. And I was just wondering, is that the sort of thing we can point developers into, especially little small houses like that, just to ask them to think about it?
I had a development of
Again, I think we're in new local plan territory. I think we should require them, actually. I think it's a good idea. Other areas do. So let's make sure it's in the new, but again, it's, you know, we're under, yeah. So.
Condition 6 on the list of conditions recommended by KCC Ecology requires an enhancement plan to be submitted, and it specifies that details of bat, bird bricks and kind of so on should be included in the plan.
Sorry? Naomi, it's you.
It's just a point is that I had a development of 4 houses infill site in Sea Salt, and they did all of these things as part of the planning. So they did Swift bricks, they did bat boxes, and they did hedgehog stuff. So we are doing it.
Actually, in our plan, yet is it? So that we need to do that. Yeah. In this case, as it turns out, KCC have. Should we move to the vote? So I have proposed that we grant subject to legal agreement and safeguarding conditions, and Councillor Dan Smith has seconded. So John, if we could run the vote, thank you.
And that's carried unanimously.
The next item is the planning appeals report. Does anybody want to comment? Is anybody wanting to comment? Okay, can we agree this by general assent, or note this rather by general assent? Thank you. Lovely. Oh, sorry, you do want to comment.
Not so much a comment, but I didn't actually receive this. I've looked at my agenda and it's still 55 pages rather than 77. So... No, I'm on ModGov. Oh, right, I see. Okay, silly me.
Sorry, what's happened? Could we all speak to the chair, please? Councillor Mackenzie, can you explain?
Harry may have pressed the wrong button. We're just checking.
Okay.
Because our agendas look different.
Okay.
So I can talk everyone through it as we look. But
Planning appeals, though, should be on the public one, but anyway. Councillor Old.
Thank you, Chair. Are we talking about the agenda supplement, the exempt information?
No, I'm just talking
You're
about
talking
pages
the previous.
53 to 54, which is the planning appeals report, which is still in public. We're still on that section. So as I say, whatever button you press, you should have that. So can we note by general assent, please? Thank you. And there's no other urgent business to be dealt with in public. So now I move on to item 10. Sorry? Yes, so I'm just about to do the exclusion bit, but I have to pass it, haven't I? Yeah. So I have to resolve by general assent, and I'll read you the resolution I have to ask you to agree. To resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business, on the grounds there will be disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act or the Freedom of Information Act, or both. Could I have agreement by general assent, please? So thank you very much. That's